Well, Scott, thanks for joining me on Tendy Talk. It's fun to get you on here to kick off the 2023 episodes as we roll into a new year.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I've heard good things about your podcast.
Uh-oh, you've heard good things. I don't want to know who they came from because they're probably lies then. But it's kind of fun for me to get you on the podcast because I'm a Chicago kid too. Grew up on the South Side, played for St. Jude.
Oh, no shit. Where are you from?
I'm from the Beverly Mount Greenwood neighborhood. Grew up right behind Popeyes and Pops there on
Yeah,
130
yeah.
Kedzie.
Yep.
So yeah, so it was kind of fun to get another Chicago fella on. Although I live in Minnesota these days, and uh, where hockey is life up here. So yeah, it's fun to get you on. And uh, the one thing I like to start off with everybody though is ask, how did you get started in the game of hockey? You moved around a little bit early on and as a kid because your dad was in the uh, armed forces. So how did hockey become part of your life?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. My dad was a goalie. So when I was a kid growing up, when he was stationed in, we were just outside of Seattle, like near Tacoma in Washington State. I watched him as a kid, like playing hockey, and I just fell in love with it. You always want to impress your dad, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of picked up him, and like he was my goalie coach my entire life. And so that's how I got into it.
Well, and that answers the next obvious question then is why goalie? Well, because of dad.
Yeah, well, dad and the gear. I love the gear.
Yeah. And that's no secret, when we look at all of the great sets you had over your NHL career, and then, let's look back a little further to your time with Team Illinois and that Brian set with the TI logo all over it.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. My dad spoiled me, and that was the start of my like hockey gear love. That TI set you're talking about, and Brian's. I think it was like 7 when I got those, and been Brian's till I died my whole career because they're a great company and they took care of me the entire time.
Well, and that TI set, let's not ignore the fact that the TI logo has probably the worst representation of the state of Illinois on there. And yet they still haven't updated it. Like I get when they first came up with it, it was probably, like clip art from 1988, but they could update it and modernize it a little bit.
They absolutely could. But yeah, that it has, like you said, has not changed. And I'll never forget, that was like a Christmas gift that my parents got me, those pads and the blocker. And like when you're young, I was like 7 or 8 when I got those, but that was a sick setup.
Yeah, and it probably helped that dad was a goalie, convincing mom that that this should be a Christmas present for you, because most parents, they'd be like, I don't know, but dad being a goalie, like, no, he needs this custom set, not only custom, but like your own graphic and everything else. That dad probably helped in that regard.
Yeah. With dad being a goalie, it was nice for me if he ever got like a work bonus. He's like, okay, new gear, like let's go. Like he loved it. He like kind of lived vicariously through me, like in my route to the NHL. But I was very lucky, and I always told my parents, it's like, I don't want Christmas gifts. Spoil my sisters, like you guys do enough for me during the year, like getting me hockey equipment. And I grew very fast too, so like had to like keep upgrading the size of my equipment. So it cost them a shekel or two. So I was very lucky.
I remember, I think I was a peewee playing for St. Jude, and I was wearing some old Cooper Durasoft pads. And on one practice, my knee was just below the top of the pad. And the next day at practice, when to put the pads on, my knee was now above the pad. And I didn't practice that day because we then got in the car and drove up to Gunzo's to get me some new leg pads. My dad was like, thought I had a couple more weeks, but no, looks like we're going pad shopping today. Yeah, those fun trips. And God, going up to Gunzo's before Jerry's and some of those other shops were around, that was the place to go for a while.
Yeah. I had a couple trips to Gunzo's to get. I got those TPS contour pads there. One of my favorites. That's one of the best gloves I've ever had. I actually modeled my Brian's glove off the TPS contour glove that I played with. That was my favorite glove I've ever had. The hardest piece of equipment I ever find that I liked was the glove.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the set you see behind me, I got just last year, and it replaced that some of that I bought in 1999. Um, and I'm the kind of guy I'm going to stick with something until it just falls apart. In part because I'm cheap, but as I was looking at different things, it was the glove. Like I looked at every line, for about 5-6 years. I'm finding the right glove, and finally, I'm like, I'm not going to find anything that isn't just like the one I'm using now. So when I went to put the order in, I talked to Ev over at Vaughn and told him, what glove I was wearing. He's like, okay, yeah, we can get as close as possible in today's specs because they had changed a little while since 1999. But yeah, it's just the feel of that glove. It's so special to a goaltender. I think it can ruin an entire set if the glove doesn't work right.
Yeah, I blame most of the goals I let in on bad gloves, but no. But like, I played baseball my whole life, so like I like the feel of like a, just like a flappy like a baseball
Yeah.
glove. And I remember my first year with the Hurricanes. And Brian's is great. They took care of me. They're the best. Jaws, the best rep ever. I think I put him through 13 different gloves before I settled on one. Because like new pads, Walker, I can step right into it and play a game with that. But the glove is like the one thing, because like I wasn't that good at goaltending, right? So I needed help to like make sure I caught it. My biggest problem is I'd pop them back out of my gloves. So I was pretty particular about my gloves.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Now, one of the it doesn't surprise me that you like to tinker with your equipment and your as some people on different message boards would term both of us gear horrors because it's important to us. There was another goalie that we both grew up idolizing that was the same way, Eddie Belfour. Uh,
Yeah.
and he was known for literally breaking down his equipment. In fact, I had him on the podcast with his son Dane, and I asked him about those iconic Bauer reactors he wore that the kid from Canada is recreating right now in the black and white stripes. And as the story went, when he first got them, they were all white, and he thought it was too much, so he got a Sharpie out and added the black lines. It's like, is this true, Eddie? And he kind of laughed and goes, yeah, it's true. But you had the opportunity to actually sit down with him and talk to him when you were with the Hawks. I mean, what was that like for a kid that just grew up loving him?
Yeah, I mean, he was my idol growing up. I loved the way like he was like a chippy, aggressive goaltender. Like I feel like I was kind of the same way. Like don't stand in my crease. Like he'd hack you in the back of the knees. Like I loved him. I idolized him growing up, and it was very cool when I was playing for the Blackhawks that I got to actually interview him and to speak about those pads. He was telling me in the interview he used to like break his pads down so that the rebounds would drop. They wouldn't like pop off like nowadays with like the modern gear. Rebounds shoot like off you like that. But he's like, I would break him down so the puck just died in front of me so I could cover it, kind of thing. And I was like, well, that's like a unique take. I mean, it's different from when he played, but he was great. And I played with Dane when I was younger too. So I've known them for a long time, and it's very cool to get to interview him.
Now, when I watched that interview, I had visions of Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney. Like, remember that?
Yeah. Oh, and you could see how red in the face I was too, because I was just like so nervous. I'm like, wait, I'm the one on the Blackhawks. Like, I shouldn't be nervous, but it's you meet your heroes, and it was my first probably interview I've ever done either. So it was very cool, and he's great. He's a great guy, and like I said, I played with Dane when I was a kid, and I've known them for a long time.
It's funny. They always say don't meet your heroes because then you realize they're just regular people. Mm-hmm. And when I had him on the podcast, like I was worried about that, because like I grew up in peak Eddie Belfour era. I'm an 81 birth year. And so it's like, yeah, he was my guy. And then I had him and Dane on at the same time. And it was funny because I've talked to other people. I had him on the podcast. And I'm like, well, he's a little stiff and everything else. It's like, oh, yeah, he doesn't know me. But Dane logs in first. And so him and I were talking about skating at Southwest Ice Arena because he played for St. Jude too, and going to Hockey Unlimited across the street. And the old guy Linus who worked there, he was a goalie, so they catered to goalies. And we're talking, and Eddie logs in, and for like 2 minutes, we don't even acknowledge him. It's just Dane and I going back and forth, and then Dane's like, "Oh, hi, Dad. How are you?" He's like, I was wondering if you guys wanted me for this episode or what. But it was like, because of that, it just kind of like tore down whatever wall he had before he came in. And it just totally opened up. And I think we talked for darn near an hour and a half. And then they said, I'm not a whiskey drinker, but they still sent me some of their whiskey. And mom liked it when she was still around. So I made sure she got some of it.
Yeah. I'll never forget, like, I went to a CYA tryout when I was a kid. That's where I met Dane for the first time. And he was wearing, Ed was playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so Dane showed up in Toronto Maple Leafs gear, like mask, pads and all this stuff. And they were oversized for him. And I was like, who the heck is this guy? And they're like, oh, that's Dane Belfour. I'm like, Ed Belfour's son? And I mean, obviously I won the job, but we've been friends ever since.
Yeah, well, we'll just glad sort of the fact that you beat him out, you got the job. So it was funny. Most of the time I come up with a few little notes, but for you, being a Chicago kid, some of the same rinks and everything, like I just have a whole list of things. So I might be all over the place, but that's how us goalies are. We are all over the place.
Yeah, we're not normal.
No, too many hockey pucks to the head, I like to say.
That's right.
I was saying on the last episode, every now and then I'll tell people, I've had 6 concussions, but I put up the 7 fingers to see how quickly they pick that one up. So what I think is really cool about you is, you had a journey to get to the NHL, and it was a hell of a journey. You spend 2 years at Maine, you leave there for different reasons, and then you toil in the minors, unlike any other goalie I've seen toiling in the minors, up and down, all around. But part of that was, you had a party side to you. And you've been forthcoming with that. And at some point you said, okay, enough is enough. Enough of the Lonnie Kai, enough, enough times out partying. You wanted to get serious. How important was the support of your family at that time? And I ask that because I think there's a lot of young goalies who, with hockey, the culture is, let's go out and have a couple beers after the game. Doesn't matter if we're old enough. And then there's the parents that'll on tournament weekends, they'll have their Yeti cup, and we all know it's not iced tea in there. There's other stuff in there. It's part of the hockey culture, drinking. And you said, no, I'm still going to be a hockey player. I'm still going to live the hockey culture, but I don't need that in my life. How much support, not only of your family, but your teammates, how important was that when you made that decision?
Yeah, I mean, my family's great. It's I've obviously talked about it when I was 21 playing at Maine. It like kind of got away from me, and all of a sudden, you're out of school, you don't have a degree. The only thing that I'm good at is playing hockey and possibly stand-up comedy, and so I had to make the choice. I was like, all my eggs are in one basket. It's like, I know I can be a great goaltender. I need to like take this away so that I can really like focus on what is the best for me to be the best player I can be, to have a life, like, because other than I'd be pumping gas if like I didn't play hockey. So I made that decision when I was 21. And it was a ride. I played for so many minor league teams, but like I'm a hustler. Like even the way I approach my, path to the NHL, I do that with the rest of my life too. It's like, I just got that mindset in, and I was like, tell me I'm not going to do something, I'll do it 10 times better than you think I'm going to do. And so just grinded like 4 years in the minors, like 17 stops along the way, and then finally made it to the Blackhawks.
No, you make that, I'll call it the homecoming. You get called up to the Hawks. That call home to mom and dad saying, not only I'm getting called up to the NHL, but I'm getting called up to the Hawks. I mean,
all right, I got 2 stories for you. So I used to train in Boston with Brian DeCord. Did that for like 13 summers at Stop at Goaltending, and was coming out of my season playing the AHL with the Admirals, and I turned down like a contract to re-sign with the Admirals because I was like the best goal in the AHL that year. I was like, I'm gonna wait and see what my options are. All of a sudden, every team in the NHL came calling, and I got the call from the Blackhawks, and I was like, I don't give a S word how much you're gonna pay me. Like, I'm absolutely signing with the Blackhawks. So I pulled over. I called my dad. My dad's like the biggest Blackhawks fan ever. I was like, "Are you sitting down?" And he's like, "Why?" He's like, "Who died?" I'm like, "Sit down." I was like, "Dude, I just signed an effing contract with the Chicago Blackhawks," and he cried forever. And then and I was like, keep in mind, I'm going to be like the 4th-string goalie, like this starting off, because Michael Layton was in front of me in Rockford. And then the other story is the first call up, we were playing the Toronto Marlies, and the equipment manager came up to me and Mike and was like, "Don't throw your stuff in the laundry. Like, one of you is going to Chicago." And I'm like, I threw my stuff in the laundry. Like, it's going to be late. It's like, and they come back. They're like, "Dars, get in here." I'm like, "What? Like, you're calling me up over Michael Layton?" Like, and they rushed me to the plane. We did a pregame skate. It was like 11, and I had to be in Chicago to be a backup by like 6. And they rushed me through the airport. I was like first class, like all this stuff. I was like, oh my God, what's happening? I called my parents on the way. I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually going to play. I'm going to be on the bench for the Blackhawks tonight." And so my whole family rushed to the game. So it was very, very cool.
So growing up a Hawks fan, you're going to the games. You know what a game at the United Center is like. But that first one, when you're in uniform, down on the bench, what was that like?
It was something, man. Like, and not even because the first time I came up, I only sat on the bench for a few games, I didn't play. And then the second time I came up, when Corey got hurt, it was funny because like I got the start, and I was playing against Craig Anderson, who's also a Chicago kid.
Yep.
It's like the first time the two Chicago kids had faced off the United Center. And I knew I was going to be on TV during the anthem, and I tried not to cry. I cried so hard. Like, I was like leaking tears. Like, I saw the video afterwards. I was like, God damn it. No, it was emotional. It's like, it's everything you dream of. Being a Chicago kid, being a huge Hawks fan, and all of a sudden you're on the ice, after, 20 years of like trying to get there. It was very special.
And I mean, not only being on the ice, but being in the locker room, when you start going through the names that were on that roster at that time, so far there's one Hall of Famer, but we know there's quite a few more that are on that roster.
Yeah, that was another hurdle I had to like overcome, because I got in there. I'm like, Corey Crawford's like, I bow down to him, you know what I mean? And
right.
And so the first like month I was there, I kind of stared at my shoelaces. Like, I didn't say anything. I just tried to do my job, go to work, get in, get off, get out. But they were all great people, like Kane, Taves, and all, Duncan Keith, Chalmerson, you name it, Patrick Sharp. And they were great. They really, brought me into their community. And so eventually I got over the stardom, the fandom of being a Hawks fan, joining the team.
Well, and I've heard it with some other goalies too, where you almost have that impersonator syndrome. Like, I don't belong here. Look at all these guys. I don't belong here, but you do. There's a reason they brought you in. They felt you belonged there.
Yeah, but I especially did, I think, because I came from the Southern Pro League. Like, I have that like identity as like a glorified beer goalie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
well, the beer doesn't help.
Yeah. So it took me a while to like feel like, you know what, I am here. I deserve to be here. I have earned it, and I'm one of the guys. It took me like, I'd probably say like 2 months to like get over that little identity crisis and realize that I earned the right to be there.
No, you mentioned playing alongside one of the greatest goalies in Hawks history. I mean, Corey Crawford.
The most underrated.
Yeah, and we'll get to that next. But publicly Corey Crawford comes off as this quiet, reserved guy. But I know in talking to different people in the locker room, that's not the Corey Crawford you guys know. What kind of guy is Corey Crawford as your goalie partner?
Corey Crawford is the best. He is like you said, when you look from the outside, he comes off stale with media. Like he doesn't like attention or like talking to like media and stuff. But within the room, or like just as a teammate, a friend, like he's hilarious, and he is the nicest person. He'll give you the shirt off his back. Like he's the nicest guy, and I think he is the most underrated goaltender in the history of the last 15 years because he doesn't get. I mean, I saw it from the outside, then getting to play with him for 3 years, he is incredible. Like he was the backbone of our team, and he just didn't get the recognition because you got the names like Kane, Taves, Chalmerson, Keith, Seabrook, like overshadowing him. But we had the most high danger shots in the league all 3 years when I was there, and he was the silent backbone of our team.
Well, first of all, he gave the greatest Stanley Cup speech. At Grant Park. I so wish I would have gotten it. Somebody made a T-shirt where it was his entire speech, but they did it so that the words were the shape of the Stanley Cup. Just the greatest speech. And I think that's when fans are like, you know what? I think there's more to his personality than we get to see on a nightly basis. But you're right in that he's underrated. I forget who I was listening to the one time. They said if you look at his numbers next to Hunter Lundqvist's numbers, they're identical. And everybody says Henrik is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But when you bring up Corey Crawford, they go, oh, I don't know. The guy's got 2 Stanley Cups. Henrik's got 0. And they say, well, look at the team in front of him. But to your point, the high danger shots, and I've had this conversation with other people too, is you need a goalie like Corey Crawford to win those games because a goalie like him gives your team the confidence to take those chances to score the goals they did. For those home run passes from deep in your zone to catch Patrick Kane streaking across the blue line. You're not making those passes if you don't got a goalie like Corey Crawford in net. And I think Chris Osgood is almost like the Corey Crawford of the mid 90s. Same discussion. He's got great numbers, and everybody says, well, look at the team he was on. And unfortunately, I think that's what hurts those two guys in those discussions of great goaltenders.
Yeah, but both of them, they always made the big saves at the key times.
Yeah.
And they just neither of them got the recognition for that. So I'm outwardly like trying to get Corey Crawford in the Hall of Fame. Like he was the best goalie I've ever played with, ever seen, and I think he needs a little more clout.
He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and number 50 deserves to be hanging from the rafters.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. And when we talk the Mount Rushmore of Blackhawks goalies, we got Hall, Esposito, Belfour, and Crawford.
Yeah, that's the Mount Rushmore right there.
But because of personality, like you're peeking over their shoulders, photobombing it.
Yeah, but like if they ever make that Mount Rushmore, just put a little like on the bottom, a little darling on there.
Yeah. But we talk about those guys, but I think what's really cool about Blackhawk fans is they embrace the grinders and the hustlers. That's why a guy like Andrew Shaw is beloved. That's why they loved you. I mean, first of all, you were from Chicago, so as Chicagoans, we love anybody from Chicago that plays for our team. Doesn't matter how good they are. That's why a guy like Dan Pascal was loved by White Sox fans. But for years, we're going to be able to walk into the United Center and we're going to see 33 on the backs of fans because of, you were from Chicago, but they loved your grind, your hustle, and maybe what you did in Nashville. That comes in handy too.
Yeah, I think you might see the jersey just because it's on discount at Walmart, in that $5 bin. But yeah, they're still lingering around.
Yeah, well, I just think Hawk fans really love those hardworking guys.
Well, it's like you're from Chicago, it's like it's just a blue collar, like hardworking community that we have here, and that's just the way it is. And they, like you said, they embrace the guys who are like maybe not making $9 million a year, just like showing up, doing your job, and like I joke that like the guys who play for Chicago, like you become like a Chicagoan. Like
Mhm.
you just put your nose down, go to work, do your job, and like do the best you can. And all the guys who I played with, and I still now as a broadcaster, I still am connected with like the team. That you just turn into like a blue collar hard worker when you come and play for the Hawks.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard not to realize that it's a blue collar town when you pull up to the United Center in the neighborhood it's in. Now, granted, it's gotten a heck of a lot better than the Chicago Stadium days, but it's still not a great neighborhood. And these guys, they pull up and they're like, these are the people we're playing for. These people are spending a pretty penny. For some of them, it could be half their paycheck to come to a game. And I think that rubs off on them.
Yeah, it's like I said, I can speak for myself. I can speak for the guys that I played with, where it's like a badge of honor. Like you see it, like when you said, when you pull up to United Center, it's like these people are. It's a packed house like every night, and like you said, they're spending maybe half their paycheck to come to a game. It's like you got to show up.
Yep.
Like let's go. It's motivating. It's inspirational when you're like going on the ice. Like let's go. Like let's have the best game we can have. Not only for yourself but for the city. Because it's a big deal here.
Well, one of my buddies that I grew up with, born and raised on the south side in Oak Lawn, he somehow was a lifelong Red Wing fan. And I remember I know we never liked him for that, but that aside, he's a good kid. But when the Blackhawks were in their first Stanley Cup run, I was on the phone with him. He was having that like existential moment, like, I'm from Chicago. I see how hard this team is working. Like, I should be embracing them with the rest of the city, but as a Red Wings fan, I can. He's like, what's wrong with me? He's like, well, what's wrong with you is you're a dirty Red Wings fan. And he's like, yeah, I know. I expect that from you. But even he understood that's the city right there. Is what you saw in those 3 Stanley Cup teams. And it's funny because he now is one of the top marketing people at Goose Island Bruin. And now that they have that Blackhawks Pale Ale, he happened to be in a video sitting down with Danny Wirtz talking about the Blackhawks tradition and everything else. And
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, my buddy TJ. And the day that went on all Blackhawks social media and everything, I sent him a text. I said, did Danny know he was sitting down with a lifelong Red Wings fan? And his simple reply was, I've been expecting this text since the day we recorded this. I knew it wasn't going to get by you. But I mean, he was great. In fact, I have an Eddie Belfour signed card here and a puck and jersey floating around because Goose Island scheduled a watch party between a Hawks and Red Wings game, and they brought in Eddie, Chris Chelios, Darren Pang moderated it and everything. And TJ's like, you need to get down here for us. I forget what I had going on. I think I was on vacation or something. And he goes, well, send me whatever you want Eddie to sign. I'll make sure he does it for you. And, so he might be a Red Wings fan, but he still cares about Blackhawk fans. So he's not half bad. But anyways, I digress. Getting back to you in the game, so Crow, like you said, great friend, great guy in the locker room, presence in the locker room. But in the 2015 Stanley Cup run, it just wasn't clicking for him in the Nashville series. And you come in and you just steal the series. Like the Hawks don't win if it's not for you. Blackhawk fans know it. There's that amazing save. You just say Scott Darling Nashville save. Every Blackhawk fan knows what it is. That confidence you had in that series, what was that like?
It was just, they say ignorance is bliss. I played 14 regular season games that year, and I didn't understand what I was stepping into. Like, thank goodness, because I just kind of I don't even remember those games. Like, I just kind of blacked out on adrenaline and just did the best I could. And, to this day, I'm a humble guy, but to this day, I'll be walking around the city and it's just like 2015, that's all I hear from people. Everyone, like you said, remembers that save. And, I was just lucky that I was ready to perform that way to hold the fort before Corey got back in Game 6 and took over the show. And obviously it ended great.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's saves I think about that I've made where I can close my eyes and like I can still feel the puck hitting me. When you close your eyes and think about that save, is it kind of the same thing? You feel that puck hitting you, in the pad.
Oh, I can feel it hitting my shin right now.
Yeah.
And even that save, I mean, like I said, I try to be humble, but that was an amazing save. And but it was just like, no thought, like just I've trained, I'm prepared for this. Like it just happened. And that's the one that everyone mentions to me for, probably for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, Yogi Berra, he said something along the lines like 90% of the game is reaction, the other half is mental. And that's why we practice. We practice as hard as we do, so that when we're in those situations, we just instinctively make those saves.
You don't think. It's like you're conditioned to just do the thing. You know what I mean? So they say that like 10,000 hour rule. All the practice. I mean, it took me 20 years to get to the point when I was going to make that save, but I've been like practicing goaltending the whole time. So it worked out.
I remember talking to Kelly Rudy, and he asked me, when a guy was coming down to shoot on you, could you tell if he was right-handed or left-handed? And they said, I was looking at the puck and just reacting. Like the fact that there's goalies out there that can pick up on what hand stick they were, or some of that stuff. I might be thinking, is there a guy on my back door, or is there's somebody over here? But I'm not thinking, how are they shooting or reading the puck? I'm just reacting. It's just
that's how I played too. Because like a lot of guys are very methodical about. I've played with so many great goalies, and they're like, lefty, I'm doing this, righty, I'm doing this, and like I like to think of myself as like a middle between Ben Bishop and Pekka Rinne, like in the middle, like because size and reactiveness, and it's like, dude, I couldn't tell you who shot what side, like whatever. It's like I'm just staring at the puck, like, and I'm just gonna make sure I keep it out of the net. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe bark out a few orders to my defenseman to pick up somebody, but yeah, I'm the same way. So there's that series in Nashville, and I know, and listening to different talking heads and everything, there was a speculation of whether or not they would stick with you throughout the run or go back to Crawford. If they go back to Crawford, what kind of message does that send to you? As a fan, when they went back to Crawford, it was like, okay, yeah. But the way you handled it, and from what I remember hearing in the media, you were like, I would go back to him too. What was that discussion like with Joel? And, obviously it was the right decision when we look back at it in hindsight, in that you guys wound up winning the cup. But, what was that like? And was it just what's best for the team at that point?
Yeah, I mean, Kroll came back in Game 6, and like we came back and won the first round. And then, as you mentioned, I was like, I'd go back with Corey too. Like I know my place, like in hockey. Like I was never going to be a Patrick Waugh, Marty Brodeur, Corey Crawford. I was just happy to be whatever I can be for the team. And so when we went the next round against the Wild, like Crow started Game 1, obviously. And I talked to Jimmy Waite, the goalie coach, and I was like, do you even think about starting me, Game 1? He's like, no. I'm like, okay. I would have done the same
thing. You got to appreciate the honesty there. And living in Minnesota, it just always warmed my heart when you guys beat the Wild in the playoffs. Because it gives me bragging rights. In fact, I think it was in 2013. I may have put a Blackhawks banner on one of my neighbors' houses after the series.
Risky business.
It took some bargaining to get the banner back. He was going to burn it, but yeah.
I mean, I think we knocked him out like 5 years in a row, right?
Yeah, it was great. I remember one of those years, I had a buddy from high school that was up here for work, so we went to a Buffalo Wild Wings to watch the clinching game, and I happened to have a green Patrick Kane St. Patrick's Day jersey. So just for fun, I wore that to Buffalo Wild Wings because I know people would see the green and try and give me a high five, and then they would see the Indian Head logo, and it really confused them. And every time the Hawks scored, we would we weren't the obnoxious fans, but we would celebrate and clap, and we got a lot of nasty looks that day. And God, was it fun! And of course, they had a cardboard cutout of the Stanley Cup at the front of the restaurant. So when we were leaving, we made sure to stand by it and get a picture taken.
It's definitely cardboard if it's Minnesota.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I have a lot of fun picking on my beer league teammates with that. In fact, I skate on a team that's mostly firefighters. So, I think I may have lost you there, Scott. Give you a second. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry, I got a phone call. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. But the team I skate on, it's almost all firefighters. And so our team name is the Hosers. So I create a logo and everything. And then I was playing with jersey templates and came up with the jersey for us that we now have. It may be intentional that our jerseys look like Blackhawk jerseys just to make all these Wild players wear them. And they caught on to that too. But to my defense, all of their fire engines are red, white, and black, like Chicago fire engines. So that should be our team colors. And red, white, and black only looks good on that Blackhawk template. So yeah, I did that on purpose. Get a couple Wild fans wearing a Hawks jerseys. And now we got a new guy on the team that's a friend of mine who's also a Red Wings fan. He's like, these are Blackhawk colors. These are Blackhawk jerseys, aren't they? I was like, yes, they are. And you get to wear one, buddy. So you guys get past Nashville, you get past Minnesota, and you go on and you win the Stanley Cup. And you guys beat a heck of a Tampa Bay team that some could argue them losing that one kind of put them on the trajectory they are. You're a kid that grew up in Chicago. You're wearing the Indian Head sweater, and here you are at the United Center lifting Lord Stanley's Cup. I mean, even at this point, does it seem real?
No, it's crazy. Like I almost got emotional just thinking about it. Like 2013, I was like in my mom's basement watching them win. My family went to the two parades beforehand, like in the crowd, and to have them like come on the ice and be on the bus, not watching on TV, like doing a thing, it was very, very special.
And to have, mom and dad there and riding on the bus, instead of watching the buses, you guys are now on the bus and you're looking out at that crowd. I can see how it could be special. And it's that dream we all have when we start skating as a little kid. And so if you get to live it out, but
I know I peaked in 2015. I peaked.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you're a Cubs fan too, right?
Absolutely.
So 2015, you lift the Stanley Cup, you ride the buses, and then 2016, like the rest of us, you get to watch the Cubs win in their parade, in their rally.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It made the Blackhawks one look like a high school pep rally.
Oh, I know. It was. They won on a Saturday. And we had a 12 o'clock game on Sunday. So we all went out to watch the game together. And we had like the honor code, like no one's going out tonight. Like we have a 12 o'clock game tomorrow, and they won. And we're all like hamburgers. Like we want to go up to Wrigleyville and go celebrate with everyone. Because like all the guys, like, the guys who have been here for like a decade, they became Cubs fans. They became Chicago guys. Like, and we all wanted to go up there, but we all looked at each other. We're like, game tomorrow. We're playing at noon, going home. And then, we played the game and then you hear like the stories of how awesome it was up in Wrigleyville, like a little bit of FOMO. But no, as a Cubs fan, I was lucky enough to, when we won the Cup, we actually got to take it to Wrigley Field and be on the field for the game. And I got to throw out a first pitch. That was cool. I played baseball my whole life, so that was fun. And yeah, I mean, the Cubs, they're struggling right now, like most Chicago teams. But yeah, I'm a lifer. I'm from the South Side, but my parents are from the North Side, so I was born a Cubs fan.
So I'm a South Sider, but I'm a Cubs fan. I can't
Yeah.
stand the White Sox. In fact, in 2005, I was cheering for the Houston Astros. I'm that kind of Cub fan. I'm all for Chicago unless it's the White Sox. But everybody goes, well, how does that happen? And I said it was easy. I grew up in the 80s when every Cubs home game was on
Was on TV. Yeah.
and they played at 12:05 every day when they were at home. So the White Sox, they played night games, 7 o'clock, and I had an 8 o'clock bedtime as a little guy. They said, and they were on cable, and we didn't have cable. So how am I supposed to watch the White Sox and become a White Sox fan? And then you throw in Harry Carey, Brian Sandberg, Andre Dawson, Rick Sutcliffe, Joe Girardi. Joe Girardi was my favorite Cub as a kid. You got all these Hall of Famers, and somehow Joe Girardi was the one that was like that. But I was a catcher, so that was my guy.
Do you know the game White Elephant that people play at Christmas?
Yes.
Okay, so I just met my girlfriend's family for the first time for Christmas, and we were playing White Elephant, and I opened up a White Sox bobblehead. I don't know these people. I literally dropped it on the table. I'm like, you can steal it. You can do whatever you want with it. Like, I'm not touching this. Like, her uncles are all diehard, like, White Sox guys. I'm like, I'm standing by my Cubs fan. I'm like, you guys can have it. I don't care.
Yeah. You know, it was funny in 2016 because I was the only kid like wearing a Cubs hat to school and all of that stuff, and just getting picked on for it. I had one friend at school where he was like, I like the Cubs, I like the White Sox, I like anything from Chicago. He's still that way. 2016, all of these kids I grew up going to grade school with are talking about how they were lifelong Cub fans and this and that. And I'm messaging him going, you were? This is news to me. And they were all like, okay, maybe not a lifelong Cub fan, but I really like it is, you know, but it was funny. But there was maybe 2 or 3 where they're like, no, I want the Cubs to lose and everything else. And I told them, I was like, I respect you because just like me in 2005, you're standing by your morals. It's like, I don't agree with you, but I respect you. Yeah. They're like, yep. They're like, I respected you in 05 because you weren't going to just be like, oh, yay, Chicago. It's like, no. And the worst parade I've ever seen was the White Sox parade. What did they do it through Bridgeport? And, you know, a couple guys came out of the bars and they're like, oh, cool. So we got that going for us. So after you won the Cup, you wind up in Carolina because you deserved it. You deserved that shot at number 1. And with Crow, that wasn't going to happen in Chicago. And nobody can argue that. I don't want to say you don't think highly of Carolina, but in one of your recent comedy appearances out there, you were pretty clear that it's not a happening place to be in Raleigh.
Yeah, I mean, and also like I was terrible my first year with the Canes, and I'm like team transparency. I'll tell you how it is. I did not play well in my first season, and you know, you're young, finally had your payday, like, you know, and like I'm a city guy, like I like going to nice dinners and stuff like that. And there was just like nothing to do there. It's like I was living in Pleasantville. And everyone hated me because I played so bad my first season. But, you know, at the end of the day, it was still a great place. Like the people were nice. They were nice to me. But I just didn't have like the best experience there. But it was fun to go do those 5 shows in Raleigh. And when I do stand up, I'm kind of an antagonist, like to get the crowd engaged. And so I was happy to like lean into to Raleigh and get people, you know, that's how you get people like perk their eyes up and pay attention.
Yeah.
You know, some people are there just like on dates and, you know, whatever, but you need to like get their attention. So when I go, I've lived in most cities in this country. So because I'm touring with this guy, so I usually have something to say about every city that we've been in, but it was fun to do Raleigh. And I don't know if you saw, they did that like backdrop behind me of the goal I let in. From the far blue line. I'm like, yeah, because of that goal, I don't do hockey anymore. I do stand-up comedy.
So my folks, when Dad retired from the fire department, they moved out to Carolina Beach, just east of Wilmington. So
Yeah.
I haven't been to Raleigh yet, but I'm going there in February for the Stadium Series game. So doesn't sound like we're gonna not worth staying more than the day for the game.
No. Go to Brewery Bavana though. That's the best place in Raleigh. It's best food in Raleigh.
I'm gonna write that down.
Brewery Bavana. It's one of my favorite restaurants. I've traveled the whole world, and that's one of my favorite restaurants ever. That's the only thing that Raleigh's got going for him. other than a really good hockey team this year.
Yeah, they have been fun to watch. I've been watching more and more of them on ESPN Plus because I want to know who I'm watching when I go out to that game. I love ESPN Plus because I get to watch more Blackhawk games, but I also get to see the intermission reports, and the Blackhawks have a decent intermission team, so that helps too.
Yeah, we try.
I get to see you. So after the NHL, though, you were playing in Innsbruck, and from social media, it looked like it was a beautiful place. You were having a lot of fun. You had the Great Danes out there, but then this pandemic hit, and it makes me wonder, if it wasn't for the pandemic, do you think you'd still maybe be over in Europe playing and experiencing these new adventures?
I love playing in Austria. It was a beautiful place. It's like a way different way of life when you think about the way like we have to be playing the NHL. You go over there, there's 40 games in your own bed every night. It's a day trip, like 3 hours, like at max, like to go to a game. And you're in the Alps. It's beautiful. You make some money. I loved it, but yeah, that's when COVID hit. When I was over there, my ex-wife is a doctor, and I called her because she had moved back. She was there with me for half the season, and I was like, "What's a corona?" Like, I don't know. Like, they just shut down half the downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what was all starting to happen, and then all of a sudden, like, in our games, they're like no handshakes after the game. All of a sudden, they started canceling games, and they like canceled our whole season. And I was like, I got back 4 days before the travel ban to like come back. And it was crazy, but I loved playing there. And then I came back, and the next season I was with the Florida Panthers, and because Joe Quenneville, like, he's my guy,
Mm-hmm.
he's like the best guy ever. He was coaching down there, but then Charlotte didn't play that season, so they had nowhere to send their goalies. They had 6 goalies signed, nowhere to put them,
Mm-hmm.
and so I ended up going to Rockford. Shout out Rockford.
Yeah.
And I was same thing. Like, I'm commuting from Chicago to Rockford. It's an hour and 20 minutes, and every day for practice. And it's like I'm making just enough to pay for my gas. And I was like, you know what? It's a time to call it quits. Like, I'm ready for a new endeavor. I loved playing. I'm grateful for every second that I got to play hockey my entire life. But now, I have hopes of doing other things in my life, like the second show kind of. And
Yeah.
so it was a hard transition. But now, I'm kind of like figuring out all these new things. Like, broadcasting is very exciting, and the stand-up comedy is very exciting. So it's a second show in my life.
Yeah, and you talk to any pro athlete, and once they retire, it's finding out what that next act is.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy for them. And for a while, you were doing stuff with, Barstool Chicago, and so it was fun as a fan to still get to hear you out there and being honest about the game and everything else. But then you stumble into this comedy thing. When did that come about? Clearly, you're just a naturally funny person, but comedy isn't easy. And I've watched a lot of. I'm not a comic myself, but I enjoy it. So I've watched a lot of comedians. I've watched a lot of Jerry Seinfeld comedians in cars, and you realize there's so much to that craft. So, how did you wind up getting into it?
So I've always loved comedy. I never thought I would do comedy. But my first date with my now girlfriend, I went to the Laugh Factory to watch a show. It's a big like venue in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy went up, and he was freaking hilarious. Like, my comedy is like very dark. And he had a very dark sense of humor on stage too. And I was walking out to go to the bathroom, and he noticed me from playing for the Blackhawks, and we became great friends now. I consider him like my mentor. And he was like, just try it one time. Like, come out with me, open for me. And he's like, if you don't like it, I'll never ask you to do it again. And we drove to Gary, Indiana together and did a show, and I was awful. I did like an 8-minute set, and I was terrible, but I loved it. Like, I loved the nervous, anxious anxiety. It reminded me of playing hockey. Like, that rush you get up your spine because you're scared, but you're excited at the same time. And, and since then I've just been gung ho. Like, if I'm not broadcasting, I'm doing comedy every night. Like, so, that's how I got into it. And I thank him for that all the time. And he helps me still to this day. We go to shows together and stuff, travel around. But, he was a Ray Westbrook, in case anyone was listening. He was, the reason why I got into comedy.
Now, I mentioned it earlier, the culture of hockey, it's synonymous with drinking. Comedy, it's kind of the same thing. So how have you been able to deal with that, or are you just at the point where it's not even a problem anymore? You're just like,
well, I drink now. I'm not
okay.
I stopped for a long time to make sure I made the most of my hockey career. And the things I talked about, that happened when I was 21. Like,
right.
It's a decade ago. So now I'm kind of kosher with like all that. But it is different. It's a different lifestyle because like it's a late night job, right? So comedy, you're out till 2 a.m. Broadcasting, you're out till midnight. And so I'm fortunate enough that I'm allowed to sleep until noon if I want to. Because I just have night jobs. But no, you got to keep it all in check, right? So it's you never want to have too many and go up on stage and look like an idiot. So, so I'm lucky I've never done that. So,
no, that, it's, like you said, I love comedy, but it does have that.
Most comics are sober, like, because I mean, comedy comes from like trauma, kind of. Yeah. And so we all kind of have the same like stories, like even my personal comedy, I talk about real stuff that's happened in my life. Like, I talk about, my dad drowned, my mom had cancer twice, like I'm divorced, like blah, blah, blah. Narcoleptic girl fell asleep on my face, stuff like that. So comedy kind of, it's like almost therapeutic to like tell these stories, but in a lightning way.
Yeah. Well, and the dark sense of humor helps you deal with it. And I say it because Dad was fireman for 30 years in Chicago. And I went to the firehouse every chance I got with him. In fact, one of his firehouses was engine 103, 3 blocks from the United Center, right over by Johnny's Ice House.
That's right down the street from me.
Yeah. Madison and Laughlin, I believe, is where the house is at.
Yeah,
right?
I could see the United Center from my house.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
But Dad has a dark sense of humor. That rubbed off on me. And sometimes my wife is like, what is wrong with you? Like, that is not funny. This is not the time to laugh. I'm like, this is how I deal with things. Like, but she started to get it. We wound up watching Rescue Me with Dennis Leary. Dad hated it because he doesn't like any of those fire shows because
they're not like correct.
Well, they're not correct, but they bring in like the soap opera side of it, all the love interest, but Rescue Me got the firehouse scenes correct. And I don't know if you've seen it or going to watch it, but in the final episode, there's this instance with somebody's ashes where it just goes poof, gets on everybody. Well, my mom passed away on Mother's Day. And I was out in North Carolina. I was, thank God my sister and I were out there with her when this happened. But I'm talking to my wife on the phone afterwards, and she goes, well, what are you guys going to do? And I said, well, we're going to cremate Mom. And she pauses and she goes, well, you guys aren't. I was like, no, we're not. We're going to let the professionals handle it. And then she goes, whatever you do, don't pull a Rescue Me. Well, it was about 2 or 3 days after the fact. And Dad was having a rough morning, and I said, Dad, I need you to watch something with me. And he goes, all right, what is it? And I had it all queued up so we didn't have to watch the other stuff. But he's watching it, and this happens, and he's like just laughing so hard he is crying. So then it did what it was supposed to, brought a smile to his face. But then when we went to pick Mom up from the crematorium, he looks at me, he goes, there's going to be no chewing gum in the car, and the windows are staying up. And I was like, all right, you got it, Dad. But yeah, it's taken my wife a while to get used to my dark sense of humor because of that. But it still gets to her some days when me and my sister are going back and forth with it because we're not nice to each other. And I've always said, if we're being nice to each other, something's wrong, and
yeah, if I'm not chirping you, it means I don't like you.
Yeah, exactly. It's, and I've said I've had the FDNY, 2 of the FDNY goalies on and 2 of the NYPD goalies on after their rivalry game when it was on ESPN and then this past spring. And they agreed the closest thing to the firehouse or the police precinct is the locker room, because that's where guys just chirp on each other and they're so mean and pick on each other. But it's when they're not being mean and picking on you that you need to worry. Because then they don't, if they're not doing that, then they don't like you.
That's what I said. It's like, my friends know if I'm giving you a guff, it means I love you.
Yeah, it's same. And it's, I'm not going to say it's a character flaw of mine, but it's the byproduct of growing up at the firehouse and in the locker room. So, well, we've been talking a while, and I want to be mindful of time. I end every episode with 10 questions. They're the same 10 questions I've asked all, 102, 103 guests now. So Eddie answered the same ones. Dane answered the same ones. First one is, what's the craziest coaching moment from your playing days where a coach just lost it?
Craziest moment? I don't think I've actually had one. I can think from a personal standpoint. I'll never forget I let in a goal from the red line against LA Kings, and the look that Joe Quenneville gave me, it was like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. You know what I mean? And it was the first period, and I had to play the rest of the game, and I shut it down. We won 3-1. But just like that look of disappointment, it was like your dad being mad at you at the dinner table.
It was one of those looks where he's like, I don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
I
might have cried, but
that's why we wear masks, so people can't see the tears. So what is your favorite all-time goalie mask?
Probably my Wayne's World one. Other than that, I loved old Kolzig's mask, the Colzillo mask when he was in Washington. And then Eddie's, obviously the Eagle, probably my top 2.
I just had Kolzig on, and I asked him about the mask. He said the first one looked like Barney the dinosaur. And he wore it and had a terrible game. And he goes, I never wore that one again. I went back to the painter and said, we need something else. So what is your favorite rink that you've played at?
Honestly, I loved Vancouver. I loved playing at the Van. The Canadian cities were all great. The new Edmonton rink is awesome. But yeah, I'd say Vancouver is probably my favorite place to play.
For me, and you're going to know this rink, it was always Southwest Ice Arena.
Yeah.
Back when they had the Oregon.
Played plenty of games there.
Yeah, that's why I learned to skate at the Murray Bannerman Learn to Skate.
Yeah, my coach in 7th grade.
This was a question I forgot to ask you earlier. You made some disparaging comments about the city of St. Louis. They're 100% valid because I've been there. My niece just moved down there this school year for law school. She grows up in Chicago, spends 23 years in Chicago, not a problem. 1 week in St. Louis, her car was broken into and they tried stealing it. And a week later, like, her bank card was stolen. It was like, so everything.
Sorry, I lost you.
Oh, I think
we're back.
I think it may have been my question was Detroit on that no trade list too? Because those are the 2 cities I would have had on my list, regardless of how good they were.
Absolutely. I had 15 teams that I could pick, and I did all the Canadian teams, all the teams in California, strictly for like financial purposes. And then no St. Louis, no Detroit ever. And we're actually playing the Blues tomorrow. And so we're going to get to relive that catastrophe that I said on the broadcast. And I'm like I said, I'm an antagonist. Like, I don't care. You can say whatever you want to me. And so we're going to double down on it tomorrow. And I'm going to read the mean tweets like from fans from St. Louis and stuff. And I'm just going to lean into it. And because Kelly Chase wants to fight me. And I'm like, dude, you're not even from St. Louis. Like, you're from Saskatchewan. Like, grow up. And it's all for the fandom, right? Like, I don't actually hate St. Louis, but it is a shitty town. So I'm gonna make jokes about it.
It's a crap town, but for some reason, Blues players, when they retire, love to stay there.
They do.
Which is good because it's done wonders for youth hockey in St. Louis. I have a college teammate who's from there, and he was actually the GM and coach of the Junior Blues for a number of years. And so
it's great. Like, their success is like, and I've seen it. And like, I say this stuff like satirically, like I don't actually hate St. Louis, but their success there's been a lot of guys coming out of St. Louis.
Yep.
Like kids coming up. So it's great for the game of hockey. And like, it's like I said, it's not actually a bad place. It's just easy to pick on, I guess.
Yeah. This is something you'll appreciate because when I think of the St. Louis Blues, I think of Curtis Joseph and Brett Hall. Because they were Blackhawk killers in the mid 90s. Brett Hall's son, Jude Hall, was a goalie. Do you know who his favorite player was? Ed Belfour.
Nice.
The Black. Now, of course, it's because Jude's a little bit younger, so his dad was playing with Eddie when he was in Dallas. But for me, I just find it funny that St. Louis Blue legend, his kid's favorite goalie, was a Blackhawk goalie.
Not picking Cujo.
No. Which did you happen to read Cujo's book?
Yeah.
That his
what
upbringing,
a story.
Yeah. I kind of like the guy now, which is tough for me to say for as much as I hated him as a kid.
I love watching him play. He was a great goalie.
Oh yeah.
His book was very interesting. Like, what a life.
Yeah. I read his book. Now I'm reading Hosa's. I got it back here. I'm a couple chapters in. So
yeah, we just did the banner raising. Hoss Doggies have a life, man. He is the best dude ever. So I'm happy for all his accolades and success.
Yeah. So back to the questions. What is your favorite goalie stick that you've ever used?
Let's say the Curtis Curve.
Oh, you used one of those.
When I was a kid, I used to rip the Curtis Curves. But I mean, now just like the Warrior, like whatever, like Warrior makes great sticks. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I'm using a Colin Delia Pro Return right now, which is a Warrior. And I got it because I had the trigger grip and I wanted to try it and kind of like it. So what is your favorite youth hockey memory?
Playing the Quebec PB World Championships with Team Illinois. Actually, we were, I don't know if it was TI or CYA, but we got to go to the World Championships as the Blackhawks.
Oh, cool.
So I still have so we played in the NHL division, the top division. So Little Caesars played as the Red Wings. We played as the Blackhawks. And I still have my jerseys from the World Championships. And I was 33 when I was in 7th grade as a Blackhawks jersey. And so it kind of came to fruition later in my life. So that's probably my best memory.
I was going to say, do you have those two jerseys, just your Stanley Cup 33 and your Quebec Junior 33 side by side hanging up on the wall?
Not side by side, but I definitely have those two jerseys from them. I wish I was in the basement. I'd show you my man cave. I'm a hoarder, so I kept all my stuff from playing in the NHL and all my masks and everything. So.
Yeah, no, I would have done the same thing. I mean, I've only had a few masks and I still have all of them. And then I got the one I'm wearing now that's out in the garage in my stall. But so what's the best chirp you've heard on the ice, off the ice, directed at you, not directed at you?
What's the rating of this program?
Are
we
whatever
all rated?
Yes, we can be.
Okay. I was playing the Flyers one time, and we were down. It was like 3-1. And this whole time, the whole game, this guy had been just like giving it to me every TV timeout. He was right in the tunnel, so I could hear everything he was saying the whole game. Just the worst things you could think of. And it was finally the last TV timeout, and he was sitting there with like this beautiful girl, like on a date. They were like 2 rows back, like right in the tunnel. And he's like, saying all this stuff to me, and I lift up my mask, and I'm like, dude, I will your girlfriend. Like, remember what side of the glass you're on. And for some reason, like, the place went silent at the exact moment I said that. And so everyone heard what I said, and the entire, like, 3 sections, like, erupted laughing at this guy. And then I just looked at the girl, and I go, and just skated back to my net. That's probably the funniest one I've ever been a part of.
Nice. I never played on the stage you did, but in high school and stuff, even in college, there were sometimes fans there, and I loved going into visiting barns, and they would just get on you. And the more they chirped me, the better I played. Like I fed into it. It's like, all right, I'm playing well enough that they want to yell at me. Like, and if they were creative, I loved it.
Oh, like when I was playing in Austria, there was one team in Italy, in Bolzano. So, and my team in Austria, we stunk. We were the worst team in the league. I was getting like 60 shots a game, like usually losing like 4-0, whatever. And so the whole stadium, the whole game, they were chanting. I don't speak Italian, right? So they were chanting, "Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling, bofango." I didn't know what it meant, and I was like orchestrating them. I turn around and orchestrate them, and then I guess bofango means shove it up your ass in Italian, and I was like, "That's the funniest thing I've ever heard." Like, I'm all about the fandom. I'm a huge soccer fan. Like, I love like the fandom of that stuff. So
that's funny. And that is one thing European soccer fans have is like and it's because soccer, you can go long stretches without there being excitement, so that they find ways to entertain themselves. Their chants are just next level, and you see it a little bit in the Spangler Cup. You're starting to see those videos come out, and they have some of it. It's just, it would be nice to get more of that in North American hockey. So
the Canes are trying to do it. They're doing the surge and stuff like that. So
yeah, they've got the surge. They do, a few little things, and I don't know. It's good for hockey. I know there's some commentators out there that aren't big fans of it, but the kids like it, the fans like it, so let's do it. If you don't like it, you don't have to participate.
Exactly.
So, what is the worst post-game beverage?
Oh, I mean, is there one? Because after you're done with a game, any fluid you can get in your body. I don't know what the worst would be. I honestly, usually I can think of anything on the spot. I don't think I can think of a worse post-game beverage. I always like to have a soda after the game. I like to have like a Coke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, since I play in the beer leagues, I like a nice ice cold light beer, but that's sometimes if they bring it up, I might have one before the game to just kind of ease the nerves a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's like just one before the game just kind of relaxes me, and I always play better.
Yeah, you get a little loose, a little liquid courage.
Yeah, which for my beer league team, sometimes I need it because they're not very good, and I say it to their faces, like, I stick with this team because I like the group, not because we're any good. And they know it. We went 0 for the fall season, but we still had fun. So when you tape your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
I go toe to heel.
Okay, you are in the minority. Is there a reason you go toe to heel?
No.
Okay. See, knowing that you started with the Curtis curve, I would have thought it would have been heel to toe, because anybody who's used a Christian stick knows you have to like double up on the tape around that heel because it was just a sponge.
That's true.
Yeah, I've said before on the podcast, you owned a Christian stick if you would untape your stick at night, load it up with wood glue, and then put it in the vise overnight just to like try and get a few more games out of it. That was the classic Christian stick. So the last question, or no, sorry, two more. I think I know the one, but I want to know the why. What's your favorite number to wear and why?
33. Like I wasn't the biggest Patrick Watt fan, but I just like the number, so I stuck with it. I wore 38 in college, 37 in the minors, just because like other guys on the team had the number, so I couldn't do 33. And then when I got traded to Carolina, forward Derek Ryan, I think he's in Calgary now. He was number 33, and I had to buy the number off of him when I got traded there. It was one night of babysitting and a $500 Whole Foods gift card to get that number.
That's not bad, and depending on how good the kid was.
Oh, I mean, you're talking in the NFL, like they're paying $1 million for their number.
Yeah,
I'll take babysitting so they can have a date night and a Whole Foods gift card.
yeah. You know, babysitting for a teammate kind of puts you in good graces with them as well, I think.
Yeah.
So the last question: what advice do you have for young goalies?
For young goalies, work on your skating. I've said this before. It's like it sucks, right? Like it's like
Yep.
It's the most boring part of practicing to be a goalie, but it's the foundation for everything. So do your skating drills, get comfortable on your feet and your edges. Do that, and the rest will come for you. And it's just something I've always told younger goalies because it sucks. Like it's the most boring thing ever to do, but that will build. It's the foundation for you to do whatever you want to do after, like thinking about being on your edges. It's the baseline for everything you do as a goalie.
Absolutely, and I mean, this name might ring a bell for you, knowing you got your start out at the Orland Park Ice Arena. Is Darren McCluskey. I went to his goalie camps, the Greater Chicago Goalie Camp, and even back then we were focusing on the skating.
Darren was my goalie coach a long time.
Yeah, I've reached out to him trying to get him on the podcast. He's responded once, but as you know, he's.
I'm happy he's still alive. I haven't talked to him for 20 years.
Yes.
He used to make me do up downs. Like he'd be like, all right, 50 up downs. I'm like, what? I'm like in 5th grade.
Yeah. It was the up downs. It was from him that I learned how to stack the pads and properly recover. He was teaching us skate saves back then.
Oh yeah, toe up, skate save.
Yeah. Now, when he was coaching you, would he make you guys all stand in your crouch and like just skate around and try and push the skates out, knock the stick? Yeah. If you drop that stick, dropping a stick was catamount to murdering somebody.
My favorite thing is like he had such a complex that like he would take my gloves and he would go in net for the drills, just like in his like windbreaker. Yes. And like take my gloves and he would like take shots. Like we were kids, but like, and he thought he was all cool because I'm like looking back, I'm like, these are 5th graders. Like, obviously, you can make the saves with just the gloves on. Like you're a grown up.
But he would have his shooters like rip them full speed, not like nice and night. He's like, no, just all out guy. He was. I'm gonna say he is because, like you said, hoping he's still alive, but there's a chance with the way he lives. It's. But just one of the weirdest, goofiest, but nice guy at the same time.
Yeah, no, exactly. He was always good to me, but his just like looking back on like the career I've had now and like the different goalie coaches I've had from like looking back on my McCluskey days, or him and Stu Gould were good as Gould. Very interesting methods of teaching goaltending.
When you were going to Darren, did he have the Schmutt brothers as his shooters still? They were 2 referees. I know one of them was Mark, but they were always reffing my games. And it was funny because Mark, when the play was down in the zone, he would stand behind my net and like coach me while play was in the zone. But I remember we were playing Fenwick. It was at SIA. It was the end of the second period. I was down on the end away from the Zamboni, and there was a kid on Fenwick just kept hacking at my pads, everything else, trying to trip me. And I was playing for Brother Rice in the late 90s. We weren't very good. Of course, they won the Kennedy Cup a year after I graduated. But this kid's just giving me the business the whole, first 2 periods of the game. Right toward the end of the second period, I just had enough. So I stand up and I just cross-check this kid in the back. He goes down, and Mark is the ref down in that end, and arm doesn't go up. And the kid gets up and he's like, "Aren't you going to call a penalty?" Yes, and everything else. And Mark goes, "You've been an asshole to him all game, and I haven't called you for a penalty. Now you want me to call a penalty on him?" He goes, "I think you kind of deserved it." And at that, the Fenwick coach goes, "He's got a point." And like that was the end of it. And this kid just goes skating away, all upset that I didn't get a penalty. But Mark, later on in the game, he skates by. He goes, "You can do whatever you want to that kid. You're not going to get a penalty for me. I don't care." But if I wasn't, he always had a pocket full of Jolly Ranchers during games, and if I wasn't playing, he'd skate by and toss me Jolly Ranchers throughout the game.
That's a good ref.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, and it was. I only knew him because of going to Darren's goalie camps in the summertime. Those were fun. Well, Scott, we've been talking a while. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the podcast. All the best to you in 2023 with the comedy. It's kind of been fun to follow you on social media to see it taken off. So that's fun, and hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for having me on the pod. Onwards and upwards for you in 2023.
Yeah, excellent. Well, have a great rest of your day. I appreciate it.
Of course.